Excerpt from Chapter 3, 6 Years Old. By the time Harriet Ross was 6 years old, she had unconsciously absorbed many kinds of knowledge, almost with the air she breathed. She could not, for example, have said how or at what moment she learned that she was a slave. She knew that her brothers and sisters, her father and mother, and all the other people who lived in the quarter, men, women, and children, were slaves. She had been taught to say yes, Mrs., no, Mrs., to white women, yes, massa, no, massa, to white men, or yes, sir, no, sir. At the same time, someone had taught her where to look for the North Star, the star that stayed constant, not rising in the east and setting in the west as the other stars appeared to do, and told her that anyone walking toward the north could use that star as a guide. She knew about fear, too. Sometimes at night or during the day, she heard the furious galloping of horses, not just one horse, several horses, thud of the hoofbeats along the road, jingle of harness. She saw the grown folks freeze into stillness, not moving, scarcely breathing while they listened. She could not remember who first told her that those furious hoofbeats meant the patrollers were going past in pursuit of a runaway. Only the slaves said patter rollers, whispering the word. Old Rit would say a prayer that the hoofbeats would not stop. If they did, there would be the dreadful sound of screams, because the runaway slave had been caught, would be whipped and finally sold to the chain gang. Thus Harriet already shared the uneasiness and the fear of the grown-ups, but she shared their pleasures too. She knew moments of pride when the overseer consulted Ben, her father, about the weather. Ben could tell if it was going to rain, when the first frost would come, tell whether there was going to be a long stretch of clear sunny days. Everyone on the plantation admired this skill of Ben's, even the master, Edward Brodus. The other slaves were in awe of Ben because he could prophesy about the weather. Harriet stood close to him when he studied the sky, licked his forefinger and held it up to determine the direction of the wind, then announced that there would be rain or frost or fair weather. There was something free and wild in Harriet because of Ben. He talked about the arrival of the wild ducks, the thickness of the winter coat of muskrats and of rabbits. He was always talking about the woods, the berries that grew there, the strange haunting cries of some of the birds, the loud sound their wings made when they were disturbed and flew up suddenly. He spoke of the way the owls flew, their feathers so soft that they seemed to glide, soundless, through the air. Ben knew about rivers and creeks and swampy places. He said that the salt water from the bay reached into the rivers and streams for long distances. You could stick your finger in the river water and lick it, and you could taste the salt from the bay. He had been all the way to the Chesapeake. He had seen storms there. He said the Big Buckwater River, which lay off to the southeast of the plantation, was just a little stream compared to the Choptank, and the Choptank was less than nothing compared to the bay. All through the plantation, from the big house to the stables to the fields, he had a reputation for absolute honesty. He had never been known to tell a lie. He was a valued worker and a trusted one. Ben could tell wonderful stories, too. So could her mother, old Rit, though Rits were mostly from the Bible. Rit told about Moses and the children of Israel, about how the sea parted so that the children walked across on dry land, about the plague of locusts, about how some of the children were afraid on the long journey to the promised land, and so cried out, "It had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness." Old Rit taught Harriet the words of that song that the slaves were forbidden to sing because of the man named Denmark Vesey, who had urged the other slaves to revolt by telling them about Moses and the children of Israel. Sometimes in the quarter, Harriet heard snatches of it, sung under the breath, almost whispered. "Go down, Moses." But she learned the words so well that she never forgot them. She was aware of all these things and many other things, too. She learned to separate the days of the week. Sunday was a special day. There was no work in the fields. The slaves cooked in the quarter and washed their clothes and sang and told stories. There was another special day, Issue Day, which occurred at the end of the month. It was the day that food and clothes were issued to the slaves. One of the slaves was sent to the big house with a wagon to bring back the monthly allowance of food. Each slave received 8 pounds of pickled pork or its equivalent in fish, 1 bushel of Indian meal, cornmeal, 1 pint of salt. Once a year on issue day, they received clothing. The men were given 2 tow linen shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, 1 of tow linen, the other woolen, and a woolen jacket for winter. The grown-ups received 1 pair of yarn stockings and a pair of shoes. The children under 8 had neither shoes, stockings, jacket, nor trousers. They were issued 2 tow linen shirts a year, short, one-piece garments made of a coarse material like burlap, reaching to the knees. These shirts were worn night and day. They were changed once a week. When they were worn out, the children went naked until the next allowance day. Men and women received a coarse blanket apiece. The children kept warm as best they could.